The topic that I want to address today is how narcissists get into your head and how they go about doing this. The way that NDP cluster B narcissists imprison you is by messing with your head, and they're so good at it. They mess with your mind where you can no longer think straight. Nothing is clear anymore. It's like walking through life in a constant fog and the days are a blur and you're just forever not getting anywhere. It's like going through Groundhog's Day, day after day. And what's happening here is that you're in a trance. You are under hypnosis. And I should know because I'm a hypnotherapist. Now, the way that they do this is by tampering with your emotions. Let me explain how emotions play into hypnosis. Let's take a look at stage hypnosis, for example, and what happens. Let's say it's a bar scene. A person gets picked out of the crowd. Let's call this person a he. He's really stressed out and he's nervous because he has no idea what's about to happen. And it's mostly performed at night with an eerie atmosphere, the lighting, maybe some fog or a mist in the air. Add some drum rolls for more effect, and now the emotions have been taken to a new intensity. And now, as though that wasn't enough adrenaline, there's a waiting period as the hypnotist talks to the audience, kind of like the nervousness that you feel when given the silent treatment, huh? Now, by the time the hypnotist gets to him, he's pretty much headed for a panic attack because his brain has been on overload with all these emotions, these feelings. He hasn't had time to process any of these emotions to make sense of any of them. So now he can't think straight. And now the hypnotist walks over to him and says something inaudible while offering up his hand for a handshake. And just as the subject naturally responds by extending out his hand, the hypnotist pulls his out, scratches his head, and immediately places his hand on the subject's shoulder and says, sleep. And the subject goes to sleep immediately. And what happened here? What happened is the subject's mind was put under so much pressure, too many intense emotions, that he can no longer focus and think straight. His brain feels like a pile of mush. So the first thing that he hears that makes sense, that he understands, the mind takes it. So sleep sounds good, makes sense, and the mind wants off of this merry-go-round. The mind will always look for the path of least resistance. We're wired that way. Now let's take this scenario to a real-life situation. I'm sure all of you are familiar with Stockholm Syndrome, where the victim becomes attached to their perpetrator in a kidnap situation. Let's say it's a child that's been abducted and thrown into a cold, dark room in a basement somewhere. The first experiences of terror and the question, am I going to die? And whether it's a child or an adult, the victim becomes infantilized, where he or she cannot eat, speak, or even go to the bathroom without permission from the abductor. In order to survive, they become completely dependent on them. The child is completely alone, trapped, cold, and terrified, but every once in a while, the perpetrator opens the door to give the child some food, some water, light, and some connection. And that's better than being in the dark and isolated. So after a while, the child starts to look forward to these moments. And that's what we call trauma bonding. The mind just wants to feel better. The same person who is harming the child is the same person rescuing the child. And then the child believes that there's no one around that's going to be able to save he or she. For us as adults, as codependent, traumatized adults, we believe the same things, that there's no one around to save us. That's why we become responsible for everybody else, because we're supposed to be the adult. We were led to believe that we weren't worth saving, that we didn't matter, that growing up, right? That we were too stupid to make it on our own or figure anything out, things like that. We were taught to believe that we weren't lovable, and the list goes on. So now someone shows up in our lives and shows us that we seemingly matter to them, and it feels really good to matter. We're all in. It's like cigarettes. They really make the smoker feel better, and they thrive on the addiction. But all along, they know how toxic smoking is. But that doesn't matter because that addiction is there. I remember as a hypnotherapist, I used to think that my narc couldn't get to me because no matter what, I was an extremely strong person mentally. I mean, I knew how hypnosis worked. It's what I did all these years. But the thing is when you're dragged down emotionally over and over and over and over again and again and again, and peace no longer resides as a normal everyday occurrence because of constant stressful dramas, including the covert passive aggressive things they do, like in my case, leaving the house in complete disarray when he knew that I stress out in a messy environment. I'm kind of OCD that way. But if I tried talking to him about it, it would be huge fights ensuing from it. I mean, days of craziness that it would cost me. So, like, which do you pick? Saying something and having to deal with the chaos that stems from it, or holding that frustration within you like a bomb that wants to explode? And these are your two choices. And this guy would leave boxes and tools all over my staircase, my white staircase at that, or by the front door for weeks. Yet, if I tried to quietly put things away myself, it was go time with him. And the reason this nonsense takes place is because they are looking for a fight. For real. They are literally wanting a fight. Narcissistic supply. They are baiting you. They are predators, and they're hunting for their opportunity to pounce. You're literally a victim in these situations. You're a target. So here you are trying to dodge this fight, and in order to do this, like in the example I just gave you with my experience, you leave the mess and you try to deal with it as best you can. But the thing is that mess is now messing with your head. Every time you walk by the front room, you see the tools thrown all over the staircase. Maybe his or her, of course, I'm just going off of my experience here, but their coat, for example, is thrown on a table and 3 pairs of shoes splattered on the floor. You walk into the kitchen and there's a dirty stove and food all over the counter that you had just cleaned. So here you are, you're not saying anything, you've bottled it up just to keep the peace. But are you feeling peace? I don't think so. You're feeling anxiety and stress. And because you know that they know how badly messes bother you, you know that they're intentionally disrespecting you. Now, on top of feeling anxiety and stress, you feel resentment inside. And then what else are you feeling? Disgust, there's one, for the immaturity of it all. Anger towards them, towards yourself for putting up with it. Feelings of powerlessness, self-hatred for feeling powerless. You feel hurt, you feel desperate, you feel trapped. Think about this. All of these emotions birthed from one gesture from them, one behavior. And that's just one incident, one day. What do you think this is doing to your mind, your health? So now, after going through this roller coaster of hard negative emotions that you've been experiencing for days now, sometimes weeks, they'll come around and throw you some crumbs because now they need some new supply. They might suddenly start doing these things around the house that you've been needing done for a long time. Maybe they'll show up with a gift or suddenly offer to help you out of a financial glitch you're having. And in this, you're thinking that they regret their previous actions and they feel bad and want to make it all up to you. But all it was a cookie crumb, a crumb to reel you back in. And sometimes the crumb is so small that it looks like, I shouldn't have called you names. Not, I'm really sorry for hurting you like that, and I assure you it won't happen again. But here you've been feeling so awful for days now, experiencing nothing but anger, hurt, and fear, and you're all stressed out. So what do? Well, you take that crumb. And who can blame you? Who the heck wants to go through that again? I'll take those crumbs, thank you very much, and I'll really appreciate it because it just feels so good to be able to come back up for air again and feel some kind of normalcy. And then the codependency. Part of you goes from complete anger and hatred to, he does seem to be trying. He does look like he feels bad about this situation. He is not. And as codependents, as empaths, that can be the hardest to understand. It just makes no sense to you that people want to intentionally harm others. Besides, how can you understand anything at all when your mind is so busy being bombarded with so many intense emotions? The brain just has no time to process. This is all part of the hypnosis or mind control. I mean, I think that's why Jesus went up to the mountain to meditate. People can really occupy our space. I think his intention was to go and reconnect with God, with self, the mind, the I am. We need to go to our own mountains also, because when our environment is filled with thoughts and opinions of everyone else, and everyone is depending on you for everything, you take out the garbage, you pick up the shoes, you clean the kitchen, even if you've cleaned it 3 times already today and it wasn't even your mess. In this, there is no space to figure this out, because like the vampires that they are, they have consumed all of your energy. You're either taking responsibility for their chores or busy dodging bullets from them. No room left for you now to sit with yourself and ask yourself, how do I feel? What do I feel? Is this okay? So going to your own mountains to meditate is important if we are to heal from this. And that doesn't mean that you have to go through hours and hours sitting in a lotus position and closing your eyes. It can be just taking a few minutes in the daytime to sit with pen and paper and journal and asking yourself questions like, how do I feel? What am I feeling? Get in touch with self. Start to process your emotions. You have to undo that mass brainwashing that happened to you. Even though you're watching these YouTube videos and you're onto them, you may be aware with the information, but you're still not healed from this. You're still being controlled. When your mind is filled with repetitive thoughts about what he just said or did, or she just said or did, they are controlling your mind. When you find that you now have these health issues that you didn't used to have, like headaches, digestive issues, and other things, they have controlled your mind. When you find that you're now wearing sweatpants every day when you used to make more efforts in dressing, they are controlling your mind. When you realize that you no longer attempt to make happen any of the goals you used to have, and you just don't believe in yourself anymore, they have controlled your mind. When you are no longer inviting friends over for tea because you never know when the ambiance will suck, they are controlling your mind. Serious stuff that we're dealing with here. You've been trauma bonded, hypnotized, and brainwashed. And they got you addicted by setting up fights and then saving the day, like the story I talked about a while ago about the abductee situation. The mind becomes addicted to wanting to feel better, and now believes that the only way to feel better is through them, because the horrible things that they said to you, the degradation when you were in an emotional state, has been accepted by the subconscious mind, and now deep down you believe that you can't make it in the world without them. Thing is, though, is that you can. I read a book once by Richard Bach called Hypnotizing Maria, and I tell the story in one of my videos, but in short, this person is under hypnosis and panicked because they believe that they're stuck between 4 stone walls and there is no escape, no way out. And so the hypnotist keeps telling them to walk through the walls, but they see no way through that, leaving them feeling even more panicked. So finally the hypnotist says, I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm not kidding. The wall is in your mind. You can walk through it if only you can believe that you can. Once they understood this, they were able to get out of the mind-made prison. And as everyone in the audience applauded, he whispered to his subject, do not underestimate the force of your own belief. So I hope that those of you who really needed to hear this has gained something from it. I encourage you all to keep studying up on narcissistic abuse and codependency, that you take out your pen and paper and start journaling to find out what makes you tick and what makes you afraid, and discover what makes you grow. I leave you with that, and hopefully we shall see you in the next video. Bye for now.